There's trouble in paradise, folks. Another major star brings the BBC into disrepute following horrific revelations in the past about Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris and Stuart Hall. It's now time for the BBC's face of news, Huw Edwards, to turn out to be a wrong-un. Quite rightly, given that they are remunerated via a public tax, BBC talent have to reveal their salary, but perhaps it might cut out the middleman if they also have to regularly hand over the contents of their phone and give auditors access to the hard drives of their computers as well. The Huw Edwards story is deeply chilling, and primary focus should be with the victims featured in the vile footage and imagery of which Edwards was in possession. A sick, depraved and wicked crime. The only silver lining to this very dark cloud is the squirming and discomfort of Edwards' high-profile mates in the media, who circled the wagons to defend him a year ago, when the brave and bold Sun newspaper and myself on this channel were actually doing our jobs. You know, journalism. I devoted 6 separate monologues to this story, no less, and I got dog's abuse for doing it. But other so-called journalists like John Sopel and Emily Maitlis, stars of a podcast called The News Agents, which is basically a retirement home for ex-BBC lefties, well, they were absolutely furious about journalists being journalists. Here is Sopel doing the rounds in a set of interviews that will likely make for uncomfortable viewing this evening.
We now know there was no illegality. So what are you left with? Someone's private life has come under scrutiny, who is now unwell. I think it would be a crying shame if this is the last we see of Huw Edwards on television, when the allegations have turned out to be not that much.
Not that much, wow. Maitlis and Sopel were raging at the Sun newspaper for reporting things about a powerful multimillionaire broadcaster. Something tells me that if it was a GB News presenter facing similar allegations, they would be asking the Sun to do their worst. But there was particular embarrassment for a journalist that you may not have heard of, but who had a big job in the past. David Yelland, the former editor of the Sun newspaper, who not only objected to his former employer's pursuit of the Edwards story, for which they've been entirely vindicated, but he seemed to indulge in a strange Huw Edwards love-in at the time. These tweets are from July of last year. First of all, he tweeted, "Well done, Huw Edwards, for all the work, all the service, all the years. These grim days will pass." How lovely. What about this one? Also in July. "Today is not the end for Huw. It is the beginning," and the tweet finishes with love hearts. How romantic. But this one is my favourite. "I wish Huw Edwards well. The Sun inflicted terror on Huw, despite no evidence of any criminal offence. This is no longer," he says, "a BBC crisis. It is a crisis for the paper." Not really. The fearless Sun editor Victoria Newton has been doing the rounds on the radio this week, and rightly so. She has been very bold and very brave. Yelland's argument was that there was no evidence of criminality at the time. Well, of course, he's right. But the vulnerable youngster at the heart of the story has slammed the Star today, telling the Mirror newspaper he felt groomed by Edwards. So, Yelland's staunch support for Edwards has aged more badly than Joe Biden. He finishes with this zinger, again from July. At the end of his tweet, he says social media also needs speedy reform. So in Maitlis and Sopel, you've got journalists who are uncomfortable about journalism, and you've got a former national newspaper editor who seems unhappy with the free, unregulated and democratic nature of social media. Well, the man has form on this. After all, he participated in a highly unbalanced Newsnight discussion about this very channel, GB News, in which it was argued without challenge at all that GB News should be shut down. Yelland, for his part, described GB News as dangerous. I guess dangerous like the Sun newspaper, asking important questions about well-paid stars who, it turns out, consumed material that involved the worst category of abuse of children. If that's dangerous, then I'll be dangerous. Better safe than sorry. It must be painful for these figures in the smug, pampered media elite to see one of their own fall like this. And how they must regret inhabiting an echo chamber which saw them object to the idea of a famous, rich, powerful man on the public payroll being accountable in the face of very serious allegations, which, by the way, were never denied. Still, there is one plus side, given that they're clearly so fond of the guy. They will have every opportunity to visit him in prison. Now, let me tell you that David Yelland has responded to these historic tweets. Just this week, he has sent this message to the world via X. He said, I criticised my old paper's investigation into Huw Edwards, but editor Victoria Newton is vindicated by the fact that he has pleaded guilty to, albeit totally unconnected, charges. There were issues with her attack, but the Sun has had a mighty victory, one which makes children safer.